Hello everyone, my name is Preston Dennett, and welcome to a new episode of UFOs and the Paranormal. Today's episode is called More Celebrity UFO Encounters. The list is growing. So this is actually kind of a part 2 to a previous episode I did about celebrity encounters. And in fact, I collected about 70 encounters from celebrities of all kinds, sports stars, musicians, actors, and so forth. And yeah, I was surprised to find so many people who are quite well known who've had UFO encounters. And not just little ones. Some sightings, yes, but some face-to-face encounters, some who say they've been taken on board, so the whole gamut. And when I did that episode, there was a few of you out there who said, "You forgot this one." And you're right, I did. And just recently, going through some very interesting news clipping databases, I found a couple of more, ones that you probably do not know about, who have seen UFOs, and some really extensive encounters. So that's what I'd like to talk about today. I find these celebrity encounters interesting, not only because there is a fascination with celebrities, but I wonder if the ETs sometimes pick celebrities on purpose because they know that celebrities have a platform and have the ability to reach a large number of people. I'm not so sure that's true because they do contact people from every level of society, but certainly it does provide an opportunity to get some real airtime on this subject. And the cases I got are about a dozen of them, slightly less. I do have a little bit I want to add to one of the cases that I'd previously covered regarding Elvis, actually, who's had some very extensive encounters. I found some new information about him. But yeah, I have about a dozen other celebrities who I think you've probably heard of, but don't know that they have had some really remarkable UFO encounters. And again, these do cover the gamut. We're talking about some sightings, some close-up, but not just sightings. Entity encounters, at least one who says he's been taken on board, met ETs face-to-face. So yeah, this is pretty exciting. A couple of these cases are really remarkable and show how profoundly a UFO experience can affect a person. And I think you'll find it quite interesting. I certainly hope so. I'm going to do this in alphabetical order like I did last time. And yeah, as I said in the beginning, the list of celebrity sightings is growing fast, and I know there are a lot others out there. The first case I'd like to cover is someone I'm sure you know of. He walks the line, he fell into a burning ring of fire, and yeah, it's Johnny Cash. I had no idea that he had seen a UFO, but I found a little news clipping where he did in fact talk about a sighting he had in Jamaica in February of 1981. In fact, he was with a group of people, but he's the only one who saw it. And I'll just read you the quote that he gave describing his sighting. As Johnny Cash says in his own words, "I was on the island of Jamaica, and there were a bunch of us outside. It was such a nice night. Somebody said they saw a shooting star. So I was looking up, and I saw this object whiz by. It made a strange noise I really can't describe. I think the shape was oval, and the color was new to me, purple or rose. I'm just not sure. It was gone before I could even point it out to my friends. I don't know what it was. All I know is that I saw it, and it was unearthly." I really feel for Johnny being unable to have a supporting witness. Talked to a lot of people who've had that problem, been in a crowd of people, and they were the only one who saw it. So maybe it was just meant for him. I don't know, but it's certainly an interesting sighting by a celebrity that I did not know about. And here's another one, which was actually suggested to me by one of my fans who listened to my YouTube channel. So thanks for alerting me to this sighting by Ronnie James Dio, who is really famous as a rock star of heavy metal for the most part. He's probably most famous as the lead singer for Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, and of course his own band Dio, which was quite successful. It had 2 platinum albums. And he is widely regarded as one of the most influential heavy metal vocalists of all times. And he was asked if he saw a UFO. And he says, yes, I have. He had his sighting in New Canaan, Connecticut. It was in 1978. He and his wife Wendy had just moved, and it was around midnight when they saw a glowing object outside. He was looking through his window. He at first thought it was the moon, but could see that it wasn't, so he called his wife to see it. And this is when they started to realize this was something strange. So I'll just quote Ronnie directly. As he says, "My close encounter happened in New Canaan. I happened to look out the window. When I looked, a few minutes later, it was bigger. Then it was bigger and coming closer and closer and closer. I thought, oh my God, this is it, the big one. I was so excited. As it got closer, we, meaning he and Wendy, saw a car coming. Where we lived was kind of in a forested area, and there was this one lone car coming down the hill. As this car was coming down, it was just about to intersect with this light. I thought, he's going to take this car away. This car is going to shoot up into whatever this thing may be. I had bated breath. The car got to the intersection point, and suddenly it went out, meaning the UFO. And continuing with Ronnie's testimony, as he says, but it didn't go out as though you would take a flame and blow the flame out where there is an afterglow. It was as if someone had taken a black curtain and gone, whoosh, and off it went. I thought, now I know that was the presence of a UFO, and we were blown away. The next day in the newspaper, 20 to 45 people saw the same thing, and then heard a large explosion with light after it. So it wasn't just me, and I know it was that. I mean, I am absolutely positive that it was that. So yeah, like many witnesses, he's utterly convinced he saw something otherworldly. And as he says, we always think we're the center of the universe, and it's so untrue. I am fascinated by UFOs. Yeah, well, I am too. I think all it takes is to see one, and then you're in. And here's the next case, again, going in alphabetical order. And this is a very well-known actress who actually just recently came out with her sighting. She is one of the co-stars of the very popular television series, Touched by an Angel. And of course you know her. Her name is Roma Downey. Well, apparently now she's not only touched by an angel, but touched by an alien. Because it was on October 21st, 2020, that Roma was in Joshua Tree when she saw and actually filmed a strange glowing object hovering in the sky. She hasn't talked a lot about this. There's not a whole lot of information, but she did post her video on Twitter, and you can see images of this UFO here. And as she writes, saw these lights tonight around 7:30 p.m. over Joshua Tree. This was the 4th set of lights. The previous 3 disappeared and reappeared many miles apart. Unnerving. Military? So yeah, she's, like many witnesses, not sure what she saw. Again, October 21st, 2020, pretty recently. And you can see from this image, it's quite a bright object in the sky. And as she says, while she's filming this video live, something has appeared in the skies over Joshua Tree. But what is it? I find this fascinating because not only do we have film footage showing that this did in fact happen, whatever it is, but Joshua Tree is a pretty well-known UFO hotspot. So who knows? Could be. Moving along, I think this is my favorite case in this little collection of celebrity encounters, just because of how deeply and profoundly it affected the witness. And the witness is, if you're a sports fan, you'll know him, Darrell Evans. He's a baseball player who signed up with the Detroit Tigers. And in June of 1982, Daryl, who was a batter for the Detroit Tigers, was with his wife, Donna, sitting outside their home in Pleasanton, California, when they saw a strange light. It was actually Donna who saw it first, his wife, and she called him out. "You've got to see this." So both, as it turns out, are pretty familiar with aircraft and objects in the sky. Donna was a former stewardess, and Daryl Evans had been an amateur astronomer, an astronomy buff, since he was a little kid. So they could see right away this was unusual. I'd just like to quote Daryl as he describes what he saw and what happened. As Daryl Evans says, "The light seemed to be a little brighter than any others, and the closer it got, the brighter it got. What made it so unusual was that it was moving so slowly." This is at night, and as Daryl says, "and there was no sound whatsoever. It ended up stopping about 60 yards from our house and just hovered there, almost over a neighbor's house. The thing was triangular in shape, with the back kind of flattened out. The front had a rounded nose and some sort of dome. All the light was coming from the back, more of a glow than an actual light. It was about 20 to 30 yards wide from the nose to the flat back end, and was a dull gray color. Donna and I looked at each other and didn't say a thing. Then after about a minute, I decided I'd get my camera." Actually, Donna was urging him to. He didn't want to leave. And as Daryl says, but just as I was getting up to go inside, the thing started to leave as if to say, "No, we're not going to let you take a picture of us." I felt it sensed what I was about to do. It was so strange. It was as if they wanted us to see them. It was as if they had singled us out. At least I want to think that. A minute or so later, it appeared again on the other side of our house, about a half-mile away. Then all of a sudden, without any sound at all, it took off like a jet and was gone. Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear Daryl say that he felt that the ET says, "No, we're not going to let you take a picture of us." Many accounts like that where people reach for their camera and off the object goes. And also I thought it was interesting that he said it was as if they wanted us to see them. Because I've heard other witnesses describe that same thing. And what I like about this case also is that he wasn't alone. His wife Donna confirms everything. As she says, it was shaped like a triangle. The lights were bright and white, not at all like the lights on an aircraft. The fuselage was charcoal gray, kind of opalescent. It looked like steel. The fuselage was slowed down to a windowless dome. There was no sound at all. Usually our dogs, Kelly, the shepherd, and Bridget, the cocker, would react to something like that, but neither of them moved a hair. So her testimony is important. She's a stewardess. She sees aircraft all day long, former stewardess. So pretty interesting, to say the least. And as Daryl says, "I guess I'd always hoped there would be something like this, something that would come in peace. I think we knew from the start what it was." And Donna says, "It would be vain of us to think that there was no one else in the universe." So this entire sighting, they said, lasted about 20 minutes. They were very deeply impressed that they had seen something very unusual. And like many witnesses, they began an immediate search for confirmation. As Daryl says, "The next day, we checked the papers to see if anyone else had seen it, and even called the airport to see if they'd spotted anything. There was nothing." I suspect that there were other people who saw this. In fact, there is a few reports which seem to indicate confirmation. It's hard to say, but people in the area did see UFOs. And at first they did keep this sighting a secret, telling only a few friends, because as Daryl Evans says, it's not the sort of thing you bring up to people you've just met. Now, this is where I think the sighting is very interesting, because there was sort of an after effect to all of this, a really interesting endnote to the whole case. I've come to discover that when a UFO gets within a few hundred feet of a witness, that's a huge red flag pointing towards direct contact or communication of some kind, something beyond just a simple sighting. And judging from what happened next, it appears that Darrell Evans did have some sort of closer contact. As he says, "At the time of the sightings, I was with the San Francisco Giants, sitting on the bench for the first time in my career. The UFO was a special part of my life." Darrell believes that this did have an effect on him profoundly. He says that this UFO made him think about the universe and his place in it, made his personal problems seem much less significant, and actually enabled him to put his own personal issues aside and just focus on playing ball. As he says in his own words, "The UFO gave me a more positive outlook. It made me realize that there are a lot of things out there that are more important." So this came at a time when he really needed some encouragement, because this did have a huge effect on him and led to incredible success in his career. At the time, he was 35 years old, and his position on the team had recently been filled by a 21-year-old up-and-comer player, Tom O'Malley. And after seeing this UFO, it completely changed his outlook. As he says, "When I got a chance to play again, I approached things a lot more intensely than before." And get this, 1 month after his encounter, Darrell Evans hit 5 home runs in 1 month, equaling his total for the previous 2 months. And the next season, he actually hit 30 homers. He was so successful, he became a free agent and signed a 3-year, $2.25 million contract with the Detroit Tigers, and then went on to win the World Series. So it was his best season in over a decade. And at age 38, he was the oldest player to lead the American League in home runs, 40 of them, and the first Tiger to do so in about 39 years. So yeah, I don't know if we can put all of that on his UFO sighting, but he certainly thinks so, and I just find that so fascinating. And here's another case which I almost didn't include because technically this did not turn out to be a genuine UFO, but it's an interesting story nevertheless. And this one involves Manu Ginobili, who is an Argentinian sports star. He ended up moving to the United States and became an NBA star playing for the San Antonio Spurs. And he had an interesting experience on December 1st, 2010 in Los Angeles. And this was during a game in the area. As he says in his own words, "I think I've just seen an airplane in flames plummeting, unless I'm still asleep and it's just a dream." He put this on Twitter. And a lot of his followers thought he was joking or drunk, but no, he wasn't. A day later, he confirmed his remarks. He says, "What did I see last night? Was there any news about it anywhere? It was a strange flight pattern. I saw something strange. I'm not sure. There's an Air Force base northwest of where we were. It was supposed to be some space shuttle landing. The good thing is I'm not the only one who saw it. That's what really got me saying, okay, I am not totally crazy." So yeah, this did hit the airwaves. TMZ talked about it. You can see a picture. It actually was filmed. And as Manu says, it was a pretty strange flight pattern. I thought it was falling, not landing. That's it. It's not a big deal. It's not, like I said, it's an extraterrestrial life in Santa Monica. I didn't care. I saw something weird. And someone who saw it with me recorded it in poor quality, but it is a recording. It isn't HD, high definition, but that's what we've got. The, quote, fire can be seen in the background. So he later speculated on Facebook that this was an aircraft. But the mystery was solved. As it turns out, the company Red Bull was sending down skydivers to do advertising. And this was in the time at the place of Manu's encounters. So it appears that's what he saw, skydivers from the company that produces Red Bull. So it's a pretty funny story, and I guess you could say Red Bull really does give you wings. Not advertising for them, but they can pay me later, I guess. At any rate, I thought it was funny. Moving forward, here we have another case. And this comes from world famous model Gigi Hadid. And I don't have a whole lot of information on this case, but she believes she did see a UFO. And she did an interview with Harper's Bazaar Arabia in 2017 where she recounted her story of seeing a bright light in the sky with her friends while driving through the California deserts. And yeah, I don't have much information on it, but she described her experience as, quote, crazy, quote, life-changing. And she said it convinced her that there might be more to the universe than what we know. And since then, she has occasionally posted about UFO sightings on her social media accounts and has expressed her fascination with the topic of UFOs. So there you go. Again, all it takes is one sighting to really make you think. Moving along. So the next case I'd like to cover involves a gentleman who you may not have heard of, but you should know him. His name is Reinhold Messner, and he is easily one of the most famous and accomplished mountain climbers in the world. And in October of 1981, he went public with his sighting of a UFO while climbing in the Himalayas. He and his climbing partner, Doug Scott, also very well known, were attempting to climb the mountain. It's called Mount Shambhalong. It's located near Mount Everest in the Himalayas. And this is a big mountain. It's 24,000 feet more, 24,248. And they weren't successful in summiting the mountain, but while they were on the climb, they did see a glowing object that they described as, quote, the size of a full moon. But it wasn't a full moon, because it was moving around. As Reinhold Messner says in his own words, it was moving very slowly. It moved eastward and then went west again, southwest, and drifted finally north into Tibet. So both he and Doug Scott watched this for a long time, a full 3 hours, until it finally moved off. They later learned it was also sighted by a nearby joint Polish-British expedition, though it wasn't at the same time. It appears to have been the same object. Doug Scott saw it also. He confirms it, as Doug Scott says. It could not be a satellite because it moved in an elliptical manner. The movements of this object were irregular. Pretty darn interesting. And moving along, here's a really interesting case, which occurred quite some time ago. And the main witness in this case is Doug Pinnick, a rocker musician from Braidwood, Illinois. One of you guys who watch my YouTube channel alerted me to this. So thank you for that. Doug Pinnick is super famous. This encounter occurred when he was just a tiny little boy. This was in 1953. He's a toddler. This occurred in Braidwood, Illinois. Now, Doug Pinnick is famous as being a member of the hard rock metal band King's X. He's a bassist and singer. And in an interview, he says that he not only believes he has seen UFOs, but he was taken on board. As he says, I'm definitely convinced of that. I was abducted by an alien once. I was a little kid, and this being came into my bedroom. I thought it was a person. I thought it was Jesus because he had long, blondish white hair, and he was really tall, and he had a white robe on with sandals that tied up his leg. I was about 3 years old at the time. I remember he took my hand, and I got out of bed, and we went out into the backyard. This was at nighttime, and all of a sudden it was very bright, and we started going up and all I remember is there was this blinking light. And there were other people that looked like him, and they were going with me. I got scared, and I remember all I knew is I had a panic attack. And I tried to get away from him because I was scared at that point. I didn't know anything. And the next thing I remember, I was in my mom's lap crying. So at the time, he wondered, could this be a dream? Was this a real experience? He felt it was real. It felt real. He went outside. So he always wondered about this. And it was many, many years later that he got some interesting confirmation. As he says, and I quote, I was watching Ancient Aliens about 5 years ago. And while he's watching this show, Ancient Aliens, he saw images of ETs that they were flashing on the screen. They're often called Nordics. These are the human-looking type of ETs. And as Doug says, the Nords. That's the thing that came and got me. It happened, so I believe it. Plus, I've seen UFOs. They did crazy things that normally can't happen. Yeah, he said that the images that he saw on Ancient Aliens matched exactly what he saw. The hair, the clothes, the robes, all of it. So now he's absolutely convinced that at age 3 he was taken on board a UFO. He's a huge UFO fan, and he says given the opportunity he would definitely go live on another planet. Moving along. This one I want to thank Renee Cruz for alerting me to. And this is a sighting by Oscar winner Will Smith, the star of many movies, Men in Black, Independence Day, kind of coincidental, them being about UFOs and ETs. But when Will Smith went on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, he talked about his experience with a UFO. And apparently this was somewhere in Las Vegas, maybe near Area 51. He didn't really say. I don't know the date of it either. But I'd just like to quote what Will Smith says. What he told Jay Leno, as he says, I'm just going to tell you, it was this one night. It was on a dark, dark road going to Vegas, or something like that. It's me and a friend of mine, and I'm driving. And it was really quick. Comes down, whoosh, and just shot off. And I kind of kept driving. So you can actually see a clip of this online if you want to see Will talk about it firsthand. But he said this object just appeared and disappeared very fast. As he says, it was like quick enough that it was just fast enough that you don't really remember what it was. And it was a light. And it could have been something, but it was like some stuff had flew, man. And so Jay asked him, well, could it be military? And Will Smith says, but it was the way that it flew. Whoosh. It just hovered for 1 second. It did like that. He makes a hovering motion with his hand and then shot off. And Will Smith kind of jokingly, half-jokingly said, I was scared. I was scared. Actually, I'm really scared now because if I keep doing all these alien movies, it's like they're going to think I know something. So Jay asked him if he'd go on board, given the opportunity. And Will Smith, being the joking kind of guy he is, said, I'd need to talk to them. I'd say, look, I'm really important to my people here. But that seems like something you'd have to explore. If they were to come down and it was just me, and they brought the ship, and they said, hey, Will, you've been talking about us. Let me talk to you a second. It seems like you've just got to, just to see what the ship is like. And again, like most UFO witnesses, he's convinced that UFOs are real. And as he says, I think it would be arrogant of us human beings for us to assume that we are the only living creatures in this vast universe. I think there has to be something out there. Yeah, I agree. And moving along to our next celebrity, this one really surprised me. I did not know about this. I'm sure you've heard of the actor Dennis Weaver. He's best known as the lead actor in McCloud, a very popular television series, but he was also on Gunsmoke and in many Western movies. He starred in the hit thriller Duel, And yeah, a very well-known actor. And in fact, he was at one time the president of the Screen Actors Guild. He's an Emmy Award winner. Very interesting guy. He's very spiritual. He's been a vegetarian since 1958. He's a follower of Paramahansa Yogananda, founder of the Self-Realization Fellowship. He was an avid environmentalist and an animal rights activist, a humanitarian, a really influential one. He founded an organization which daily fed thousands of the poor and the homeless in Los Angeles. I find this fascinating because this is something we see with a lot of contactees. They're very much along these lines, environmentalists and humanitarians. At any rate, it was in March of 1986 when Dennis Weaver and his wife Jerry were in their home in Ridgway, Colorado, when they had a very close-up sighting. And they would not have seen anything if a friend of theirs and a neighbor did not come running down the street, screaming at the top of his lungs, "I want you to verify this. Look at that." So he pulled him outside and pointed at the sky, and Dennis and his wife couldn't believe it. There was a UFO. And I'll just quote Dennis Weaver directly, as he says, "My wife Jerry and I were standing in the front garden. We looked up, and there was this strange-looking object. It was sort of cigar-shaped, tubular-shaped, and it just hung there for the longest period of time. It had no lights or any type of cloud around it. We just stood there and stared at it. It was certainly something that was totally unidentified, something I'd never seen before. I couldn't find any reasonable explanation for it. It hovered, and then it simply disappeared." So this sighting left Dennis and his wife, Jerry, firmly convinced in the reality of UFOs. And as Dennis Weaver says, "I know UFOs exist, and I believe they are manned. I personally feel that the chances of there being intelligent life someplace else in the universe, which has billions of stars and planets, is absolutely astronomical. We are being observed in much the same way we might observe bees or ants." I'm not sure I agree with that, but it is an interesting quote. And also interesting is Dennis Weaver himself became something of a UFO advocate, along with his son Rusty. And as Rusty Weaver, an actor in his own right, says, "My father and I have talked with scientists and UFO researchers who have documented case histories." So yeah, Dennis is a believer. He's seen him himself. As he says, "I believe in UFOs. I've seen one with my own eyes. I think there's a lot of evidence we've made contact. Many of the unexplained flying objects and unexplainable happenings are the result of other forms of life making visits to our planet." All right, next case, which is again one that was alerted to me by someone who saw my video, so thank you for that. And this involves British pop star Kim Wilde, who's probably most famous for her song "We're the Kids in America." At any rate, she says she saw a UFO in 2009. And I will just quote her directly, as she says, "I was in our garden with my husband and a friend. Helicopters and a bright light came towards us. Maybe they were after someone, but then they left, and the light remained behind a cloud in the sky. And everyone thought I'd been on the Pinot Grigio, drinking." But as Kim Wilde says, "I was looking up, and it moved from 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock again and again, and then a smaller one joined it. My husband went running in to find something to film it, but I felt compelled to watch it. It inspired me. It was a UFO. I can't believe I saw it." So yeah, this did affect her profoundly, as it often does. She has very strong feelings about ETs. In fact, she titled her new album, "Here Come the Aliens." And she thinks they are looking down on us. I'm wondering if she had some level of contact, because what she says is something I do hear from contactees. As Kim Wilde says in her own words, they have been keeping an eye on us for a long time and are in despair because of the way we treat each other and the planet. And they are sitting around holding conferences about what they are going to do with this lot, meaning us. And we're a sorry lot, the way we treat each other and our planet. I just found that interesting because she's echoing the same message a lot of contactees get. And now we move to another case that really quite shocked me. I had no idea that Cindy Williams had seen a UFO. And Cindy Williams is probably best known as the co-star of the mega hit sitcom Laverne and Shirley, which at one point was actually the single highest rated, most popular show on television. But she's quite an accomplished actress. She also starred in the comedy movie Euphoria, which is all about UFOs, which is what prompted her to come forward with her sighting. And one of her big breaks was in the mega hit movie Graffiti. So, interestingly enough, Cindy Williams was born in August 1947, 1 month after the Roswell UFO crash, and sadly she just passed away a few months ago this year in 2023. But what many people don't know is about her close-up sighting of a UFO in 1980. She was at a church retreat in the San Bernardino Mountains in Southern California. And I'll just quote Cindy directly. As Cindy Williams says, "I've seen UFOs. I've seen them. I was with a group of people, and we were walking up a hill when these 4 lights seemed to rush over the mountains towards us. They were orange and purple discs, gleaming and shimmering. They vibrated in perfect formation. It was like they were trying to announce their presence to us. There were 8 kids in our party, and we stared at those saucers for several minutes. Then, with an incredible speed, they were sucked into the distance and disappeared." So pretty interesting. She's not the only witness to it. I thought it's interesting that she said it was like they were trying to announce their presence. That wouldn't surprise me at all. UFOs do seem to put on displays. So yeah, that's Cindy Williams' sightings. And she's also had some interesting psychic experiences as well. She's very much into pyramids and pyramid powers. And she also said that she once had a prophetic dream about her future. Many prophetic dreams, but one dream really impressed her because it provided encouragement for her when she was at the lowest point of her acting career. And as she says, "It convinced me to keep on trying so that I'd become a very successful actress," which she did. I just wanted to include that because we do see that a lot of contactees have pronounced psychic abilities, and that just seems to turn up again and again. So those are the cases I wanted to cover from celebrities who have seen UFOs, but there's one more, as I said in the beginning, that I'd like to talk about. I already did talk about Elvis Presley's many encounters, but I found out something interesting. It's an interesting endnote to his life and his contact with ETs. Because apparently people are seeing UFOs over Graceland, over Elvis Presley's gravesite in Memphis, Tennessee. In fact, in 1980, there were some 13 reported sightings at Graceland. And these are not distant sightings by any means. These are objects that are hovering as low as 20 feet over his tomb, his gravesite, and actually shining down beams of light. And there are first-hand witnesses. As one witness says, he's a security guard, and I'll just quote him directly. "Use my name and I will lose my job. But this place is getting to be like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I have seen the spacecraft around here several times. They always come between 2 and 4 in the morning when hardly anyone's around. The first time I saw one was on a drizzly night last April. I heard a strange noise near the grave, like an electrical popping, like a high-tension wire that's been blown down. I ran out there and saw a strange glow in the clouds above the tomb. Then a saucer-shaped object dipped out of the clouds and came down within a few yards of the grave. Then the whole area was lit up by a ray of light from the underside of the ship. Now, my job is to protect that tomb with my life if necessary, but I was so scared I couldn't reach for my gun. After a few seconds, the light suddenly went away and the ship zoomed away. Now, he did actually try to call on his walkie-talkie, but he says it was filled with static. And he's not the only one who's seen this. He's talked with his coworkers. It's well known among them. As he says, all of us who work here have seen the UFOs, but we're under strict orders not to talk. I've told you too much already. But this did get into newspapers because reporters were able to find outside witnesses. There were some Elvis superfans who visit the gravesite regularly, and they're talking, including 16-year-old Sandy Lee Smith, who told reporters, and I quote, "I was one of Elvis's biggest fans. I feel close to him when I can park outside the fence at night and look toward his grave. The night I saw the UFO, I was with my friends Debbie Barnes and Rhonda Flowers. We saw the flying saucer dart down from the sky. There was a strange humming in the air. It was raining, and the tomb is a good distance from the street, but there was no doubt about it. A beam of light lit up the tomb. I jumped out of the car. The UFO started to go away, but it came back and hung around for 10 seconds or so before disappearing." It's a pretty interesting endnote, I think you'll agree, to the encounters of Elvis Presley. So that's it. That's all I could find so far. I think that's close to at least 100 celebrities now who report encounters. I will say that I know for certain Marina Sirtis, who played Troy on Star Trek The Next Generation, did have an encounter. I know there's an article somewhere in People magazine. I saw an interview with her where she talked about her sighting, but I couldn't find any information on it, so I didn't include it in this episode. But I definitely wanted to give it a shout out. Maybe one of you out there can find some more information for me. I'd certainly be interested. But yeah, as you can see, these celebrity encounters match up exactly with what other people are telling. No surprise there. But it's interesting to see that people of all levels of society are having encounters, sightings, being taken on board, face-to-face encounters with entities. And with celebrities, there's an added complication because a lot of these people, I think, are keeping quiet. It is still a subject that's not fully accepted in mainstream society, and I think can cause people to sort of roll their eyes a little bit, chuckle behind your back. And I wouldn't be at all surprised to find out that there are many, many other well-known celebrities out there who have seen UFOs and are not stepping forward. I know at least 3, 4, or 5 myself, and I'm not going to say because until they step forward, it's not up to me to out them. But yeah, I know it's far more numerous than we hear about, and that this list of about 100 celebrities will continue to grow. I certainly hope so. So hope you've enjoyed this episode today. I want to thank you once again for watching. As always, I truly appreciate it. Keep looking for answers. Keep searching for the truth. And most important of all, keep having fun. Bye.